If you can hear the rain, frogs, birds, basically all of the wildlife in Australia outside right now, my apologies. There is nothing I can do about it. It is war out there currently, and I am struggling internally. Today we have 5 manga recommendations. I've been having a lot of fun doing research for stuff like this, going through and reading stories, talking about new things, and basically just being able to provide a lot of you some new stuff to read. Instead of just doing singular videos, the group manga recommendations have been rather fun. So these are new-ish stories that have relatively small amount of chapters, but are becoming increasingly more and more popular. And I decided to spread up the variety a little bit so it isn't just all weekly Shonen Jump. There is some differences here, and hopefully some enjoyable ones. Chojin X by Sue Ishida. You might know that name. That is the same author that has done Tokyo Ghoul. And if you love Tokyo Ghoul, you are going to love Chojin X. This has 39 chapters currently. It's not a weekly, it's not a bi-weekly, it's not a monthly. This is released whenever Ishida is ready to post it. That's pretty rare. And because of that type of freedom and flexibility, you get a story and art that is so beautifully reflective of it. Chojin X is very different for Ishida. You'll feel a lot of similarities, some stuff that he's pulled from Tokyo Ghoul, might be some of the characters, it might be some of the overlying themes, even the emotion behind a lot of interactions is very much Tokyo Ghoul-esque, but things are expanded upon, played upon, or just drawn so visually different that it feels so incredibly unique. It feels like a passion project by Ishida, and with how he's releasing it, how much attention he's putting into it, this is not a story that is marketed as the next big thing or something that's trying to milk or make a lot of money. This is just him doing him, and the story that you're able to read is so incredibly good because of it. Look, I love Ishida, I love Tokyo Ghoul, but I have a genuine respect for Chojin X and the story that it's trying to do, because it's a little bit complicated. It takes these very simple, well-known ideas like superpowers, for example, and mashes it into a really gritty, dark, prophecy-esque story, and these powers being a reflection of a person's mental health and their emotional state, you start to feel right at home, but in the best ways possible. Chojin X currently only has 39 chapters, and story-wise, when it comes to structure, it is the best time to start reading now. What I mean by this is that the story is kind of just beginning. The reason is because the first phase has basically just completed. It gives you all the setup, all the groundwork, all the foundation, everything you need to understand this story, and finally, the true quote-unquote story actually begins. And at this point in time, we're currently just starting that. If you were ever interested in Sue Ishida's work, his art, his storytelling, Tokyo Ghoul, Chojin X will be right up your alley, and the time to read it is right now. Kindergarten Wars is something that I didn't expect to like. I seen some artwork for it and I was like, but seems alright. But when I read it, I felt this odd sense of joy. Something that I've experienced before, but with a couple of other stories. See, Kindergarten Wars looks really cute and cuddly. You have these teachers taking care of their students, but then they have bullets and guns everywhere. It's kind of like, what is going on? Why does it look like this? But all of this is super deceiving. See, when you read it, the story is pretty full on. It's super wild. It's super visceral. It's very gruesome in a lot of aspects. And it's something that will take you by surprise. When I was reading it, the comparison I felt was instantly Spy Family as well as Sakamoto Days. And when you blend those two things together, 100% you get exactly this story. Now, obviously it offers a bit of uniqueness for itself. It's not just some loose ripoff. It's really well done. It's super entertaining. You see, these teachers are actually ex-assassins or hitmen, spies, you name it. They've been locked away in prison, but to write off their prison sentence, they become kindergarten teachers, right? And not just any kindergarten teachers. This school is a place that houses all of the children of the wealthy, rich, bold, powerful, you name it. Anyone that has a name for themselves, their children will go here because it is the safest on the planet. That's just the bare minimum. But do you see how beautifully that operates? It kind of gives this circular motion of story where it's like, okay, these children are connected to very powerful individuals that people are trying to kill every single day. So you want to go for the children sometimes, to try and get some sort of leverage. But then you have the same people that used to do that stuff that are now prisoners trying to work off their sentence. Ex-hitmen, assassins, etc. protecting them. And they're very, very good. The smartest thing about this manga for me, not only with how it's drawn, because it looks very cute and friendly, but then it gets into the action and it's like Sakamoto Days 2.0. It's brilliant. But actually how normalized it is. See, the characters don't don't really act like hitmen or assassins or these very crazy killer-like individuals that are past their prime. No. Like, they're just normal people. They're just there like it's an everyday job, and they treat it like an everyday job. They treat the conflict that sometimes happens like an everyday job. This is a beautiful read. It's super entertaining, and I guarantee if you do read it, you'll have a blast with it. If you like Spy Family, if you like Sakamoto Days, you are guaranteed to fall in love with this manga. Especially when it gets an anime, which I hope it does, fingers crossed. This will blow up. I promise you that. It's been a while since I've talked about Gachi Akuta. Here we are. I remember when this first released, and I was reading it and I fell in love with it. It has this real grungy, gothic, punky art style to it, and at the time it was really interesting. Unfortunately, I fell off it, and the big reason I fell off it is because it's not marketed. It's not something that was published in English, so it was difficult to kind of keep track of and read it comfortably compared to a lot of other stories. However, this has finally got an official English release. It's going to be, I believe, on Kodansha's website when they launch the app and everything. It's very similar to what we know now with Weekly Shonen Jump and Viz, etc. But Kodansha is going to have their own manga. They're some of the hardest to read when it comes to official English translations, but it seems like they've caught on. This is going to be a big seller for them, hopefully, if it catches on once again, because I think it has all the groundwork, all the finesse, all the flair, all the attitude to really be successful. Currently, there's no real weekly, edgy, dark, brooding, you know what I mean, manga that's currently out. This will fill that void. You want high octane action, you want a mystery, you want the artwork that reflects that edginess. All of it is wrapped perfectly within this bundle for Gachi Akuta. I have yet to catch up with it. It has 64 chapters, and the large amount that I've read, loved every single moment of it. It's kind of difficult to put your thumb on where this story goes. The idea of this hierarchy system, the rich kind of cannibalizing onto the poor suffering because of it, and then this giant pit behind them where you don't really know where it goes. So obviously our main character falls into this pit, he gets exiled into it, and it is a completely different world. No one has ever come back from this pit, and there's life down here. There's like these big monstrosity beings that roam around eating humans. There's actual humans down there that have survived too and live on their own accord, so it's like a completely new world. It's like the Dark Continent for Hunter x Hunter, except a garbage bin. Very interesting, very stylish, worth your time. Go check it out. Goku Rakugai is the shortest one on our list. It only has 9 chapters, and it's because it's a monthly, but just look at this artwork. It sells itself. That is a beautiful, beautiful character designs. And you might think, oh, well, you know, that's the color pages, it's gonna look all flashy. No, this is in the manga. It looks basically identical to this. Obviously, there's some playfulness when it comes to having those chibi-like characters that look kind of funny and quirky, of course, but the artistry, the city-like landscapes, the character designs, everything is so personalized and unique and just so refreshing to look at. The story is pretty interesting too. You have 2 siblings here that work as kind of like fixers, hitmen, not really. They kind of just take odd jobs within this pretty lawless-like town, and then you sprinkle on top of that a bit of weird creature-like aesthetic and just a world that is very new. Does that make sense? Like, of course, there's a lot of similarities to the normal world when it comes to structure, but then you have the lawless part of it, you have the creature part of it, and it's just blended in there really nicely like it's normal. Like, oh, that weird thing over there, that's normal for this world. Or those people doing that thing, that's normal too. So seeing them go about their everyday life, take on contracts, kind of grow with each other, having very different personalities. The sister is very brooding and dominant, commanding. The younger brother is playful and chaotic and kind of upholds himself really well. So you're going to see some pretty similar tropes to Weekly Shonen Jump stories, but not fully drawn out. So if you don't like those tropes, you might find it more enjoyable in here because they're utilized but they're not relied upon. This has also finally got an official release. You could not read this before, but it is now getting translated every single month at the same time as Japan, in English, and a lot of other languages. So you can read it right now. Super accessible, super enjoyable. I'm very excited for its future. I love monthly stories. I love the attention to detail. The artistry reflects that, and overall it has a bright future ahead of it. Now, the last one on this list, News Exorcist. You're probably looking at this and think this story is very different to everything else that I've talked about. And you're right. This is a Weekly Shonen Jump story, the only Weekly Shonen Jump story here. It is a part of their new lineup. But you might also notice that it looks rather familiar, and when I tell you about this story, you might be a little bit surprised. So News Exorcist follows this boy within this new school, and he comes across this big sister-like spirit that has a lot of power. She's connected and sealed within this school. She's been here for a long time, and she's waited for someone to be able to see spirits to connect with her again. Our main character has that power. There's a reason, a backstory for that obviously, but they actually connect. She provides him a power to enhance basically what he has. He's a person that's very protective, very strong-minded in that regard, so he's always trying to help, save, protect people in whatever way he can, and he'll jump at the opportunity to do so. Pretty standard, nothing crazy. The spirits, however, is where things get interesting. See, this story has a ton of resemblance to two other stories that you know that I know that you know. Jujutsu Kaisen and Phantom Seer. The best way I can describe News Exorcist, because it only has 8 chapters currently and hasn't really detoured off into a different direction. I'm going to be surprised if it's able to continue and gain success. I don't see it doing all too well, but I kind of hope that it is given a chance to some extent, right? News Exorcist is basically Jujutsu Kaisen at the beginning, when Yuji goes to school. Just imagine that. So it never leaves the school, never goes off into a different direction that we have now. It just takes place at the school. And that's not saying News Exorcist couldn't leave the school. It might do a Kaizen thing as well and go off further into a whole different realm. That seems like a possibility that's easy, but then it's just Kaizen 2.0, right? Phantom Seer, funny enough, feels almost identical to it, and I feel like they know they made a mistake. See, Phantom Seer wasn't insanely well received, but it wasn't bottom of the list. And there was a bit of controversy surrounding this story because News Exorcist and Phantom Seer is basically the same thing. It's just Phantom Seer, in my opinion, is drawn a whole lot better and has a bit more of a twist and uniqueness to it. It's not the most revolutionary thing, but it has a lot more detailed differences to what this story is, right? The only equal footing that they had is that they all fall within the shadow of Kaizen, and the controversy for Phantom Seer was that it was a little bit too close to Kaizen's rise to fame. Now, there's no real evidence to point to that being true, but having two stories that are very similar, that are kind of both growing in popularity, is a little bit redundant because you start to cannibalize one another. You don't want that, especially if they're both on the rise. See, Kaizen wasn't at its peak, and you don't want to disturb that rise to its peak. However, once it has peaked, once it's reached that limit, once it's sold a good amount of stuff already, then you start to shift people into the next thing that's rather similar to it. So in my opinion, and I could be completely wrong and just over evaluating this whole thing, News Exorcist is trying to not only capitalize on Kaizen's success, but also be that replacement that Phantom Seer was. It is eerily similar. Still rather enjoyable, a lot more simplified than Kaizen, a lot more simplified than Phantom Seer. It's almost like they've just boiled everything down to a simmer and got rid of any sort of complexity or identity and kind of just have something simple to hopefully build off. The artistry is pretty standard for Weekly Shonen Jump. Looks pretty when it wants to be pretty, normal when it wants to be normal. It's like a pinch of Kaizen and Black Clover, a little bit of Fairy Tail kind of combined together. Nothing all too crazy, but I think given the opportunity, it could grow into a stable story. I don't see this being a top seller, something that's flying off the shelves, but I do see it being stable. And currently, Weekly Shonen Jump need that. A lot of their successful or stable stories are coming to an end, so they need to start finding some things to really kick up into gear. This might be their attempt to do so. News Exorcist is only 8 chapters, so if you're interested, give it a chance. You might thoroughly enjoy it. That is it from me. If you're interested in these manga, or even if you've read any of these manga, let me hear your thoughts. If you want to see more manga recommendations, but based around different things, like maybe the characters or a genre, a theme even, so like edgy manga recommendations or sad manga recommendations, stuff like that, right? Do let me know. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. It supports me a ton, and I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching.